Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike DiGiacomo. I'm the U.S. Attorney here for the Western District of New York. And standing to my immediate left is the current acting special agent in charge, Mark Grimm, from the Buffalo FBI office. I appreciate everybody coming out this afternoon. The reason we're here today is a short time ago you noticed that the Attorney General of the United States made an announcement that there was a national healthcare fraud takedown. I guess what I would say, unfortunately, we had two doctors that practiced in our community that were part of this healthcare fraud takedown. Those doctors are one, Dr. Joel Darinka, 40, who's of Orchard Park, New York, and the other one is Dr. Anami Farrell. He's 50 from Ontario, Canada. Just a quick overview of the scheme of both of these. Dr. Farrell was charged civilly, where Dr. Darinka was charged criminally. Both involve healthcare fraud, and the healthcare fraud that both of these individuals engaged in was defrauding Medicare. And they did so by ordering durable medical equipment and prescribing durable medical equipment for Medicare recipients that we believe were not medically necessary, and that resulted in Medicare, which, as everybody knows, is funded by the taxpayers, resulted in Medicare paying millions of dollars in claims that we felt and do believe were not medically necessary, and also for services that were not performed. And just a quick overview of how these schemes generally work. These schemes generally work. You need a variety of participants. You need, obviously, somebody who's on Medicare. But generally what happens is in these schemes is that Medicare, you have telemarketing companies that gain information from Medicare recipients. And that can come from a variety of ways, through advertising, through radio advertisements. And then these telemarketing companies reach out to these Medicare beneficiaries, get limited to very little information. They also then, these marketing companies will then get an arrangement with a doctor, and that doctor will then speak with the Medicare beneficiary in order, in both of these two cases that are here in the Western District of New York, involve prescribing durable medical equipment. And for those of you who aren't familiar with durable medical equipment in these particular cases tended to be braces, whether it be knee braces, hip braces, back braces, shoulder braces, things of that sort. So that's the durable medical equipment that was involved in this type of scheme. In addition to having the telemarketing company, you have the doctor, then there's usually a billing company involved, and then at the end there's the pharmacies involved who actually send the durable medical equipment. But our belief and our feeling is these cases, especially these fraud cases involving Medicare and telehealth visits, the key component of these cases do not happen without the doctor, because at the end of the day, the doctor is the one who signs the prescription form. And if that prescription form is not signed by that doctor, no durable medical equipment can be filled by the pharmacies. So at the end of the day, we believe that the doctors are one of the most culpable in this, because without their prescription, nothing happens on the front end or the back end. So for those reasons, those are the reasons we brought charges, one criminal charge and one civil case against these two individuals. Before I turn it over to questions, I do want to introduce again Mark Grimm, the acting special agent in charge for the Buffalo FBI. And what he wants to do is he's going to say a few words, and then we'll turn it over for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank the United States Attorney's Office and the Department of Health and Human Services for their partnership in investigating healthcare fraud. Fraud against the government hurts everyone. It's a selfish act, ultimately. In this case, the doctor betrayed the public's trust to enrich himself at the expense of the American taxpayer. Healthcare fraud affects everyone, individuals and businesses alike, and causes tens of billions of dollars in losses every year. It can raise health insurance premiums, expose patients and beneficiaries to unnecessary medical procedures, harm patients, and increase taxes. Healthcare fraud takes many forms, including altered or fabricated medical bills and other documents, providing and billing for excessive and unnecessary medical treatments, fraudulent medical billing schemes, including charging for a service that is more expensive than the services which were provided. The FBI works directly with many federal agencies, such as the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as our state and local partners to mitigate these crimes and help stop further victimization. But we need the public's help to identify additional criminal actors who perpetrate this crime. When you receive medical care, check your explanation of benefits forms frequently for accuracy. One of the most effective ways to determine if insurance information is being used without your knowledge is to review the EOB forms sent to you by your insurance company. These forms list the services and supplies provided to patients by your medical provider. Make sure that the dates, locations, and services billed match what you received. If you suspect healthcare fraud, contact your health insurance provider and report these crimes to FBI, the IC3 website. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Again, these cases don't happen without the assistance of all law enforcement. Obviously, the FBI, HHS, DEA sometimes involved, not in these particular two cases. But again, it's a collaborative effort by all law enforcement and coming together. And the things Mark pointed out with respect to if you suspect a loved one, because obviously Medicare is driven for people who are 65 years or older or disabled. So if you suspect someone in your family is the subject or a victim of fraud, please reach out as Mark pointed out, because that's the only way we can learn and find out about these and proceed forward and go after those individuals that engage in this fraudulent conduct. With that, I'll open it up to the floor for any questions. Question on the left, yes.
Yeah, I know you said that one is civil and one is criminal, but what charges do they face? Could they now not be able to practice? You know, what are the next steps for that?
Okay, I'll start with Dr. Darinka. Dr. Darinka is charged criminally. He was charged by way of an indictment, charging him with healthcare fraud. His case is early on. There'll be an eventual scheduling order that's put in place. And then he obviously, like every other individual charged with a criminal case, they have various rights, which would be to whether they want to proceed the trial or whether they want to resolve their case by way of plea. His case is very early on. If in fact Dr. Darinka were convicted after trial or by way of a plea to his certain felony offense, his medical license is subject to be removed. As for Dr. Farrell, he's civil. It's still a possibility that his medical license could be in jeopardy down the line, but it's a little different from a civil perspective, where oftentimes in a criminal conviction, the medical license is often taken away relatively quick. Any other questions? Yes?
I guess what was the background of these cases? How long did they take to build, or just how did they get started?
Cases get started in many ways, without getting too specific for these two cases. Oftentimes, as something Mark pointed out, you will have beneficiaries who will have gone through their benefit statements and realize they'll see that Medicare paid for a visit with the doctor that's not their primary doctor. And they'll be like, I never saw this doctor. And then they will call they'll call Medicare. They often have a complaint line, and then certain times things are determined like that. Other times individuals turn up on other investigations, and then so there's a variety of ways. There's no one clear-cut formula that I can tell you that this is how these cases come about.
How has the addition of telehealth made things more complicated for you? Because you can look through the computer and find out when things happen, but it just adds a whole new option for people to cheat the system.
Well, again, telemedicine changed the playing field, especially Medicare changed their telehealth rules during the COVID. So yes, it's difficult to substantiate these cases. It often takes a longer period of time for the reasons you pointed out. There's more nuanced layers, but oftentimes with telehealth visits, most times, and I shouldn't say most, oftentimes there's recorded conversations between the doctor and the Medicare recipient, and you start getting that information from a variety of sources, and then you start building your cases. But to truly answer your question, telehealth did make it a bit more challenging when it comes to healthcare fraud cases.
what is it like to make such headway on something like this, knowing that the people who typically use Medicare are maybe some of our most vulnerable in our population? So to have something come of an investigation like this that brings about change, just what is it like for you as an investigator?
Well, from an investigative standpoint, again, I don't want to speak for everybody. I'll speak for everybody here from law enforcement. I mean, it's rewarding when you can accomplish and build a case like these, because again, at the end of the day, everybody in this room pays taxes, and you're paying. Although you may not be a Medicare recipient, but at the end of the day, your tax dollars are funding this. So it gives us a great sense of pride. From law enforcement, all walks, even the civil folks from our office that do the civil recover of these, it's very rewarding. Yes?
I have one other question for you. In like the National Justice Department news release, it also mentioned Kevin Whitman of Irondequoit.
Sure.
Is that being announced in Rochester today?
Kevin Whitman was announced a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
There was a release out of Rochester. I can tell you the exact date. There was a release out in Rochester. Whitman's case is a bit different. I mean, Whitman didn't involve what Dr. Farrell and Dr. Darinka. Whitman was different in that he obtained fraudulently. He was holding himself out as a doctor and obtained a number. You have to get a number through DEA in order to prescribe controlled substances. He got a number that didn't belong to him, represented it was him, and was ordering controlled substances and dispersing them. His, to my knowledge, and there's nothing contained as the investigation so far, would lead anybody to believe that his conduct was parallel or similar to Dr. Darinka's or Dr. Farrell's. His was distinct in the sense that he was actually distributing narcotics that he wasn't allowed to prescribe.
Good. Thank you.
I know this is a lot of money, and taxpayers are going to see, these figures, $14.6 billion. The government was able to get some of that back. I see some of that money.
They were, and we actually, our office has, and all the U.S. attorney's offices have, a asset forfeiture department. And what happens is if we can ascertain that money is available, that, for example, if there's money in a bank account that we can trace back, we believe we can trace back, was in part from those illicit conduct, then we in fact will seize that money. Truth of the matter is that oftentimes you're not going to recover every dollar that was fraudulently paid by Medicare. You get what you trace assets and you do what you can to seize those assets. And as in the national release, oftentimes, not in the cases here, but they'll seize cars, bank accounts, things that can turn into liquid cash.
This is a big crackdown. Is there anything else that's being done to make sure these things can't happen in the future?
You would hope awareness. I think as Mark pointed out, awareness is the best key, and educating folks that this is what you need to look for. And obviously you have takedowns like this, it sends the message, but am I going to assure you that conduct like this will never happen again? That's not, I would never make that statement. Because we've all seen over our time as being prosecutors and investigators that when you think you've done something on a positive, that doesn't mean that you put an end to it. So I would say knowledge is the key. And if you have an elderly person in your life, that whether it be a mom, a dad, grandma, grandpa, that is receiving Medicare, don't be afraid to ask them questions, and don't be afraid to educate them on the notion that if you get a call from someone on a random call to your house saying, hey, by the way, do you happen to have knee pain, back pain, and they start giving out their personal information, those should be red flags, especially when in fact they haven't asked for a telemedicine call or visit, and most times they have their own primary care and other doctors who are caring for them here in the Western District of New York. So education is key, and making sure having those conversations with your parents or your grandparents of advising them of things that they need to look out for, and that there is places, if they suspect that they have been subject or a victim of fraud, that there are resources that can help them.
One of them being from Ontario, how is his case being handled if he's a Canadian citizen?
At the time, Dr. Farrell's is a Canadian. What happened is Dr. Farrell would sometimes be here in the Western District of New York when he engaged in his record reviews, and sometimes he was in Canada, because with telehealth, as we've all come to learn over time, telehealth allowed doctors to meet and and work with patients throughout the country. So you didn't have to physically be in a specific location when you dealt with Medicare recipients. So you could be in Canada, you could be in Buffalo, and you might be talking to a Medicare beneficiary that was in the South.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate